I I am Kristen Lear, and I am the presenter for this session, and Stephanie Clark is my moderator. And we're going to be talking about executive functioning skills and social emotional skills. So a little housekeeping. If you have any questions just put them in the chat. Stephanie Clark will answer them if she can, or she'll hold them to our question until our question and answer section. And then just know I'm a fast talker. I get really excited when I'm passionate about something, and I love talking about executive functioning skills and social emotional skills. So if you need me to slow down, you can hit on the reactions. There's a little icon down at the bottom, and you can just hit the slow down, or you can just type in the comments, "You're going too fast, Lear." So let's get started here. A little bit about myself. And while I'm talking about myself, please go ahead and share where you teach at and what you teach, just so I have an idea. I have a experience in a little bit of everything. I've been teaching since 2008. I've taught gen ed, I've taught special ed. I'm currently our ED teacher for 7th grade at Noblesville East. So I've kind of been all over the place, and it's great seeing the different experiences I've had, just to be able to see that this can work in every classroom. So our objectives today, we are going to identify the importance of teaching EF skills in the classroom while supporting the social emotional needs. And we're going to learn some strategies to use in the classroom. Now, I know there's a lot of teachers that will push back saying, "Oh my goodness, it's just one more thing I have to do." But when you incorporate EF skills and social emotional skills, it truly makes an impact in your classroom, and it makes things easier. I feel like teachers that have bought into this have saved time just by using these strategies. So we have two parts. We're going to talk about the importance of each area, share some strategies, and then have some time for question and answers. Now, a lot of my resources that I'm sharing in this presentation today are from Harvard University, their Center on Developing the Child. Pathways to Success, they are a phenomenal resource. If you are on Teachers Pay Teachers, definitely check them out. They have some really neat things to support student learning. And then also CASELS. I know a lot of people have heard of them and checked it out. So big question. Why am I supposed to be teaching executive functioning skills in the classroom? Shouldn't this be something that's taught at home? Now, ideally, yes, we want these skills taught at home, but they're reinforced in our classroom, and we're able to help our students that way. So we are able to accomplish more tasks and meet goals when we actually execute those executive functioning skills in our brain. It helps us and our students stay organized, helps students pay attention in class, using self-control, and working through challenging tasks. So what I'm thinking, since I teach middle school, I think of a typical middle school kid. I'm thinking, okay, we have some organizational issues. We have sometimes the kids aren't paying attention in class. These are the skills that we want to improve upon, so that way they're more successful. Now, research shows, and I have some research at the very beginning, it shows that children have opportunities to develop these skills, and it's going to help society and those individuals experience those lifelong benefits. So it's crucial for learning and development, enabling positive behavior, and allowing us to make healthy choices. And what I really liked when I was checking out Harvard University, they shared that children aren't born with these skills, but they are born with the potential to develop them. So even as us as adults, if you are somebody who's not a very organized person, you can still become organized. You have the potential to develop those skills. It just takes more practice. Now, I know some of our students, they come from different backgrounds. We may have students who, parents teach them these skills, they're doing great in the classroom, or we have students who struggle and have different and difficult home environments where they may not be able to develop these skills, or they may have neglect or abuse and may have been exposed to that toxic stress. So, and that messes with their brain and like how they develop that executive functioning skills. So this is important, especially thinking about this past year teaching in a pandemic. We have kids that have had so many different experiences. We want to make sure that we are working on these in the classroom. So executive functioning skills, there are technically 10 different categories. of skills to be taught. I like to always group these skills with pairs because I feel like a lot of these go blend together. So we're going to kind of talk about these in pairs and share some strategies on what you can do in your classroom. And while you're listening to this, one goal I want you to do while you're listening is to come up with 1 or 2 strategies that you want to use next year in your classroom. And I also want you to kind of think about, okay, I do this. How can I make this better? And, teaching, special ed for as long as I've been teaching special ed, I still feel like I want to improve upon these skills. Like I really try to work on these skills with students, but I can always do better. So I'm always reflecting on it. So, think about what strategy you want to try, and also what have you already done and how can you make it better? So first up, this is the big one, especially in middle school. I always hear a lot from teachers, just hearing the frustration that students, they have missing assignments, they're unorganized, they don't come to class prepared, and just trying to get them through our lessons, it can be difficult. So one thing I like to share with teachers there's some easy strategies that we can apply at the beginning of the school year that can help us out the entire year. And, some teachers are like, well, I teach from bell to bell and I don't have that time to do it. Some of these things you can just incorporate, and it gives you extra time during your class instruction. So students are able to accomplish them. And just so you know, all these strategies that I'm sharing, the link to the slides is actually in where you guys logged in to get to this. So you can go back and, access all these slides so you don't have to sit and write them down. So the big ones that I think are most helpful, just being a resource teacher and going into the classroom, is when teachers have their agenda on the board. I know that's a big thing, and I've seen such a change over the years of teaching that teachers are putting those things on the board so students know where everything's at, and just making sure your agenda is in that same spot every day so students know where to look. Graphic organizers, having students repeat back directions. I loved last year when I was co-teaching in class, the teacher I worked with would ask different students, be like, okay, what's our first step? What's next? And that really helped our students know, okay, now I need to get going with my activities. The organizational piece, this is a big one. If you schedule a weekly organizational time in your classroom, I guarantee you're going to see a huge change for your students. Starting off, if you use a lot of Notability, start off your class by creating those tabs so students know where to file their assignments, so they can go in and make sure that they're opening it. And when they open a new assignment in class, you can say, okay, this needs to be filed under our word work or under our under the notes or this section. So that way students are practicing those skills of organizing their items digitally. If they're using a binder and you have different papers for them to use or different folders, make sure you put them in, like, okay, put this in your folder under this tab, or turn in your paper in this box over here. That way students, it's consistent for them so they know where everything's at. And one thing, whether it's a gen ed student or a student with an IEP, when I go see lockers in the hallway, sometimes I'm like, oh my goodness, let's get you organized in a system. Now, if students would spend the last 30 seconds to a minute in your class putting things in the right folder or putting things up where they're supposed to be, overall, we're going to see an increase in their organization. It's going to be a lot better than what it was. So in something else too, I always hear a lot from teachers that they never have supplies when they come to my room. I wish they would just bring a pencil. Having a spot for that student in the classroom to know that, okay, I have my pencils right here, I can come in and grab one if I need it, definitely helps out overall. And let's see, I can go ahead and show you. So these are some examples that you guys could be using. Having that supply area is definitely helpful for students in case they're missing something, and it's going to make your class go a lot smoother. Those designated turn-in spots for them. And this is one thing that I think, looking at this agenda right here, this is very helpful for students, not only for students with IEP, but also students in the gen ed setting. Having those pictures of where to find things is helpful. I know coming into a classroom, sometimes I'm like, where can you find this assignment at? But if you know that they're working out a Canvas for that reading quiz, those students will look up there, glance, they'll see it, and then they'll be able to know where to go. And also, having that notability, or like where they turn items in, just having that little visual, whether it's on your board or whether you have it on projected in your classroom, that helps students know where things go and where they can find them. All right, so next up, the attention and the self-control. These two are another big one. I think just thinking about classroom management, starting this off the right way at the very beginning is very important, because, you know, if you don't start it off right at the start of the school year, it might be a rocky year for you. So I'm just thinking about certain students in particular. If you have a student who constantly gets distracted, no matter where, you sit them by, think about your placement in the classroom. Like, this student could be sitting, like if you have your desk set up in groups, have them in a group, but have their back facing the majority of the class. That way they can't see all those distractions. They just see whatever's in front of them. So think about that placement of where you put students, making sure you have those clear instructions, provide that flexible seating options. That's something that has been definitely helpful for a lot of students. If you have those little bands for where they can kick on their chair, just different options for students to be able to sit. Visual timers are definitely helpful for students. If you have students who are struggling with knowing that, okay, we have 3 minutes to finish our bell work, having that timer available for them can help them with their focus. Like, oh, I have to get this done, let's go. Making sure you're checking in with students, asking those questions. A lot of these things we already do as teachers, but I think it's when we put more attention to actually, doing these and making it more purposeful, we're going to see a better return from our students. Next thing, behavior, that whole self-control piece. Our students, I think about this, our students sit in the middle school setting in their desk, sometimes for a 60-minute block. That is a long time to be sitting in a student chair. So having breaks in the classroom, having a chance for some movement is definitely helpful, and making sure you as a teacher are calm. If I know sometimes I'm very energetic and I come in, I know if I start the class off and I'm kind of spastic, my behavior in my classroom for my students is going to be a little all over the place. So I have to come in and dial it back and just make sure I'm in that calm yet positive way. So that way the students can start off in the calm way. And then just making sure you set up your classroom expectations from the get-go and make sure they're clear with your students. One thing I really loved when I was co-teaching was this teacher, if you can see this picture down here in the right, bottom right-hand corner, this teacher every single year left it to her students to create the classroom norms. So what the students would do, she would start off saying, okay, you guys have Post-it notes. Let's write down what we want our classroom to look like. What are some things that are important? And so then they would compile all their Post-it notes and the students would group them and come up with what their classroom rules are. And honestly, the classroom rules that they come up with, they're always very similar, like pay attention, be respectful, be on time, complete your work, have fun. That is typically what we see from our students. That's what they come up with. And then just posting them and reminding them. And whenever the class was having a rough time, that teacher would say, hey guys, remember we came up with norms together. We came up with these classroom expectations. We need to follow them. We're missing number 2. And if you have them labeled, you can just point to a student saying, hey, look at number 1 up there. So you know that you need to be paying attention. And then I also have some other pictures up here too, to show some examples of like some break areas in the classroom and some flex seating. So having a spot near your library with some sort of flex seating where students can go if they need that break, just for like a minute or 2 or 5 minutes. And then also having a spot for like a reward time if students are struggling and you have that time later in your day where you can implement a reward. Provide that opportunity for them where they can go in and pick out a game and take their mind off of what they're doing. That's definitely something that can help out in your classroom. All right. Next step is task initiation and time management. What I love about this slide, if you see in the bottom corner, there's actually a timer going on. There is an extension through Google Chrome that you can add a timer. So that way you can start counting back, and so students know exactly what's going on, and you can have like the current time, you can have it counting backwards, really whatever you need it to do. If you just search it in Google, you'll be able to find that extension. But that definitely helps with time management for students, and helping them initiate their tasks because they see what time they need to do. Making sure that in the classroom, if you have students who are good, strong students that can be your peer mentors, and you know that this student really is strong in writing, you can say, okay, today, and make sure you talk with that student beforehand. Say, hey, this student is in charge of talking to or helping you out with writing the hook or the introduction paragraph. They have a really strong one. If you want it checked, come see this other student. That can help with students that are struggling. And, some students just don't want to ask their teacher right away, and they may be more open to talking to one of their peers. Providing those brain breaks. Had a teacher that would do yoga in between things. So the kids, when they got done with their bell work, they would stand up into the tree pose, and they would pause, and then it would help them transition into the next activity. I don't know what it was about the yoga, but it was amazing because that also helped with the overall class. And then making sure that, you have those directions, they're visual, you say them orally, using those timers, and then just making sure the kids have a list of activities, what they're supposed to be doing, especially like when they're done with work, what they need to be doing. Let's see. So it didn't ding for me. But normally you can set the timer to ding at the very end. This is something, I don't know how many people worked with Rachel Google. She used to be a speech teacher in our building. She shared this strategy with us, and I love it. Students who, or let's just say teachers who are very consistent on what they do each day. They know that, hey, we're going to do a warm up and a mini lesson, and then there's going to be time to read the passage. Then you have an exit ticket, and then you have a break. Having that time actually on the clock shows students that they can actually see where they're at and what they're supposed to be doing. So if you're very consistent with your timing of your class, whether it's in this order or you do other things like, oh, we're having a lab today, so you're gonna be working in your lab, and then you're gonna be working on your exit tickets, or at the very end, this blue box could be you're organizing your materials. So seeing this, the students can actually watch the time and help them gauge how much time that they need for their task. My clocks are on loan. I would have another picture of them, but I had a clock per class period in here where I would color on the clock with a dry erase marker, and would have it set up for each class so students can see what they needed to do. And it changed. Some classes it changed, and that's why I like how you can use that expo marker to erase it and make your new times. So that's something that's definitely a fun strategy to use. Next up is our working memory and metacognition that go together, I think, as well. And these are strategies I know a lot of teachers use. I see teachers using these. It's just, how can we fine tune them? So providing those brain breaks, like we talked about, giving that time for processing, teaching students how to take notes in class. This is something I know I can just think back. I remember I had a teacher that taught me how to take notes when I was in 7th grade. If I didn't have that teacher, I don't think I would know how to pull the main information. I would just highlight the whole paragraph and not go into more detail. But if we actually show the students how to take notes, and we're modeling it for them, then that's only going to help them. And especially modeling our read alouds. Like if we are doing our work and we're trying to, let's just say we're writing an essay, and we're starting with a thesis statements. I know I'm going to sit here with the students, because thesis statements are hard. No matter what grade level you're in, they can be difficult. I will start off by writing different things on the board, and then I would just show them my thinking process, and I would break it off into, different parts of it. Like, hey, I need to make sure I talk about this in my thesis statement. And I would reword things so that way students could see how I'm thinking, and then explain to them, okay, now let's take our thesis statement and use some topic sentences. Let's turn these into topic sentences. So that is one strategy that I know is helpful for students when they see the teachers thinking about it. And then teaching students how to review their work before they turn it in. I hear a lot of times saying, hey, did you check your work? And they're like, oh yeah, duh, I got it done. I'll go ahead and turn it in. But a lot of times kids just look at it and they're like, no, okay, checked it, I'm good. Having showing them how to check their work and saying, okay, let's rework these problems. I know math teachers are great about plugging that answer back in and making sure that it's the right answer for the problem. If you're solving equations, like, okay, let's plug this back in for X and see if this is right. So practicing with them and taking that time to teach it is definitely beneficial. And then also reflecting on your assignments, making sure that students are reflecting on how much effort they put in and what they can do better is definitely beneficial. So here's some other examples too, is, switching up your environment, using some kinesthetic. It's nice sometimes too, if for students, like if you go outside and read for a moment, or teaching them how to mark the text within their books, practicing in smaller groups if you can. Those are just some examples that I was able to find from some of our awesome gen ed teachers. And the next step is a perseverance and flexibility. This is one where I always giggle, because I had a student with autism when I was teaching in Carmel, who had a really hard time with changing schedules, and the student was obsessed with the Home Alone series. So we came up with this little visual that, like, let's just say it's an NWEA day and the schedule's different. I would hand that student that little card that had Macaulay Culkin on it with his hands over his, like when he's shaving or something, I think is what it was. And it says, oops, change in schedule. I would hand that to that student to start off class or start off the day. And he would get a giggle out of it and know, okay, I know that I'm going to have a different schedule. So giving them that advanced notice helped out with that transitional piece. And I think for adults too, it's nice to know, when things are changing in the future, it's nice to get that advanced notice that something's different, so we're not panicking the last minute. So just as an adult, imagine if you have kids and all of a sudden the daycare calls you 15 minutes before you're supposed to be at work saying, oh, sorry, I had the flu, kids can't come here. Or, hey, I decided to go on vacation, kids can't be here today. That 15 minutes, it's a panic moment for us adults when we're trying to figure out our plan B. So think about a student who is, let's just say, really excited for that science lab, and all of a sudden something happens where they're not going to be going outside and doing this lab. It can bum them out, just how it can bum us out as adults trying to figure out our change of schedule. So giving them that advance notice is definitely big. And I love just cheering students on. I'm told a lot of times that I'm a cheerleader for some of our kids, because we set goals in here and we make sure that I'm constantly giving them that feedback. If they're doing awesome, I'm cheering them on, even if it's like the littlest thing. A teacher actually came in this morning and told me a story about how another teacher had taught her student this cool trick for math, and she's like, okay, tell me about it. The kid, I guess, said he plugged in like -3 + 4, and then it gave the answer on the calculator. I guess he didn't know how to use a calculator to put in negative numbers, and one of his teachers showed it. He was telling everybody about it, like, yes, and the teacher was like, you did it, and was so proud of him, and he was just so excited. So making sure we're celebrating those positive things for our students, and setting those goals for them. Okay, wow. I know that's a lot. So what questions or comments do you have, and what strategy do you plan on trying next year? So I'll give a moment to allow those of you that are in here to plug those in. Oh, that's awesome. So having students at home, breaking tasks into smaller segments, that's definitely a huge strategy that I think is helpful for students. Yeah, and moving on to, the next task I think is big too. More movement during instruction. It's hard sometimes to find the time and knowing your classes on making students, giving that opportunity to move. So I know, if you have students that are very hyper and struggle with a lot of those transitional pieces, finding the right time for them to get up and move, whether it's turning in a piece of paper or doing something in the classroom, I think it's hard to find that time, but it's so important. Yeah, I like that. The color-coded clock was something that I loved. It was a game changer for me when I was taught that strategy. I thought I knew everything. I was like, yes, I know how to help time management. But then that clock came out, and I was like, this is amazing. It's so nice and helpful. So thank you guys for sharing your comments. So I'm going to exit out of that. And I'm actually going to continue on just to make sure that we are staying within our little time. I know I only have 45 minutes for this. So part 2 is teaching the social emotional skills. So the SEL skills, they go hand in hand with executive functioning skills. I don't think we truly realize as teachers that they really go well together. So teaching these skills, if you go to castle.org, you'll be able to find so many different resources and data and all sorts of things on there. But teaching these skills, it overall leads to academic, an improved academic outcome and improved behaviors. It is long-term and it's global. It can actually help reduce poverty and improve economic mobility. So if you're in a lower class and you develop these social emotional skills, you can be moving up in your economic classes just based off of developing these skills, just based off of our studies. And then it improves overall lifetime outcomes. So it's definitely very interesting. When I was diving deep into castle.org and looking into all the research from it. So you will see this, if you go to that website, you will see this chart on here. And we're going to break it down into the 5 different areas of self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and the social awareness skills. So these are the 5 big areas that students need help with. And just knowing with COVID and being at home, even on a hybrid schedule, or just missing that whole month and a half of school and, having to quarantine, students have really struggled with their SEL skills. And I know, I've heard from parents, some parents are like, well, why are you teaching my children this? And I don't agree with some of these things. And really, if you explain to parents each area, they're like, oh yes, I guess I do understand. And I do agree that I should be teaching these to my students. So starting it off in the classroom, and then eventually it'll trickle out into our communities and overall improve our communities. So just some data to start off with again. So when students were polled, students that were in the strong SEL schools, so schools that actually taught these lessons, whether it's through advisory or through different classes, the students noted that there was a more positive social climate. They had a better learning environment, and they had a higher academic performance. So just with teaching those SEL skills, they saw an overall improvement in their school day. Now, teachers, from the teachers that were polled, 95% of them believe that these skills are teachable, and it benefits students from all backgrounds. So regardless of your background, you can benefit from these skills. 75% of teachers, they noted an increase in positive behaviors, attendance, and academic successes. So I just think of some of these students who are anxious coming to school next year, or coming back into the buildings. They're having these SEL skills and feeling comfortable in the building is only going to help them and make them want to come back in. They've also seen a decrease in bullying for schools that teach these SEL skills. And the schools that don't teach SEL skills, that have that limited resource and limited focus, they have a huge increase in bullying. So that's one thing that definitely plays an impact. And then these teachers, they noted an improvement with staff relationships. So just even amongst each other, when they're teaching these skills to students, they're noticing that it's applying and it's actually creating a better work environment for them with their coworkers. So definitely interesting data. There's a lot more on that website if you're curious to dive deeper into it. So once again, your task, try to find a strategy that you plan to use in your classroom and just kind of reflect on how you've taught these or have applied these in your classroom already, and how can you fine tune them. So in these categories, the very first one, self-awareness. So what is self-awareness? It's really the ability to understand your own emotions, thoughts, values, and how they influence behavior across the contents. So students right now, we know, as we've researched their brains, we know that their brains are not fully developed yet. They're still trying to identify who they are and come up and figure out like how to manage their emotions. So one thing where I think is very helpful for students is having students track their behavior. If you have a student who has behaviors in the classroom, make sure it's age appropriate for what you're doing, and have them track it. Say, okay, rate yourself between 1 and 5. How are you doing right now? And see what they come up with. Or when they enter the classroom, they can go up and they can have like a little QR code they can scan, or they can check out on the board and they can tell you where they're at. I use a lot of the 5-point scale where like 1, you're very calm. 2, you're okay. Not the best day, but you're going, you're good to go. 3 is you're nervous, anxious, something's going on. That 4, that orange, is the I'm about to explode, I need a coping strategy. And then that 5 is, it's like danger zone, I need a bailout plan, something illegal, like I want to throw or hit something. So using that scale with students and having them start identifying where they're at is helpful. And I always tell students, if I'm having a rough day, I'll come in and say, hey guys, I'm at a 3 today. I'm just not having it today. I stubbed my toe in the morning, and I kind of explain it, and I think that helps the students realize that, okay, you're human too, and it's okay to have a bad day. I know a lot of teachers also use the zones of regulation, like the red, green, yellow, and blue. That's something else too. Like I say, hey guys, I'm in the yellow zone today. I'm kind of running slow. I'm tired. I was up all night with a sick kid, and that's helpful. So teaching students how to identify where they're at and how they're feeling is helpful for identifying their self-awareness. And then once again, having that calming space in the room. And you can practice teaching it with students. Say, okay, in the back of the room, we have a like, I'm having a rough day today. I'm going to take a moment at my desk while you guys talk amongst each other about what we're doing today. And then I'm going to be good to go. And you can just model taking that, or practicing some breathing strategies, and, practicing those strategies with small groups. And if students need something, you can always have a list of what they can do when they need help. If it's whether it's just needing help on an assignment or needing help with like a personal problem. We had a presenter come into East a few years ago who said that she had a note card box on her desk where students would just write something down on the note card. They can sign their name or not, put it on her desk. She'll read it and say, the student would say whether or not they needed to speak right away, or it can wait. They just wanted to get it off their chest. Just having them have that opportunity to communicate with you is helpful for those students. So next up, self-management. This goes a lot with executive functioning as well. This is students being able to manage those emotions and thoughts and behaviors effectively in the different situations to achieve those goals. So this could be just like those visual reminders in your classroom, or those prompts. I do a lot with students, even like with my own children. I kind of do like the 1, 2, 3, like where I point with them. If a student's having some sort of behavior in the classroom, middle school students don't want to be called out. If I'm saying, hey, and my son's name's Wade, so I'm going to use Wade, for example. Wade, you're at 1. You need to calm down and stop doing this. That's not effective. They're going to get embarrassed in the classroom. But if I make eye contact, and sometimes I make that mom look, I'll just look and I'll just go like that with my finger, with like a 1 finger, saying, okay, yep, we're at a 1 right now. that's their first warning to know that I need to fix something. And, especially like when they get to 2 and 3, you're out. That could be, you have to take a break with me. That helps. So that's like that little visual reminder. Having posters in your room, having, I like the expected and unexpected behaviors. I talk a lot with students about, okay, what is expected for a 7th grade student when they come in the classroom? It's coming in, sitting down and beginning their work and speaking nicely to their peers. An unexpected behavior, I've actually had a student do this, come in and start barking on the floor. I'm like, oh, that's kind of unexpected. It looks weird. Let's not do this. Or I had a student that was obsessed with like petting everybody's hair. I was like, that's unexpected. We need to, we shouldn't be doing this. Let's work on this. So using that common vocabulary and using those cues and reflecting with students. Worst thing happens is if we have a student who has a complete meltdown because something happened at home, like let's just say they got a huge argument with mom or dad and come into school and just snap at everybody and freak out, and give them that process time, let them sit there and just calm themselves and then talk to them and reflect with them. Like, okay, I felt a little worried when I saw you come in, and teaching them how to process through those emotions and definitely helps them. And just keeping that communication open. And, you never want to engage in an argument with students. I'm an ED teacher. And if I started engaging back and forth with an argument with a student, it's not going to go well. It's not going to go anyplace. I was taught when I was working at Creekside with the autism grant that we had, IU Resource Center came in and helped, trained all of us. They told us that your IQ drops drastically when you're upset and triggered. So if you're thinking about like even your own self, like when you're really upset, your IQ drops and your problem solving is not there. So you want to give students an opportunity to calm themselves prior to jumping in and like talking right away about what's going on. Just make sure they're calm and ready to listen. And then also, visual expectations of what they need to be doing. So if they're struggling with participation, just like having that visual, like, okay, first we're gonna do this, then this, and just so they know what's going on. All right, next up, social awareness. Let's talk about this one. This one is huge with our pandemic. I feel like, especially with our technology, a lot of our youth is spending more time on devices. And I know I'm guilty of being on my device a lot. I've got a 3 and a 5-year-old, and I have to make sure, when it's kid time, it's kid time. I don't have a device open, and sometimes I'm not the best. Like, and I regret it because I know that they're not getting that social opportunity where students are developing that social awareness. So social awareness, it is understanding the perspectives and empathize with others, including those with diverse backgrounds, cultures, and contexts. So I think it's really important too, when a student's talking with us, pausing our computer, like, because I know we're on our devices, we're on our iPad, our computers, our phones, whatever, just pausing and looking at them and having that conversation with them. And, as a teacher to student or teacher to teacher, that makes a world of a difference so that they know that we are not distracted. Setting students up with desk buddies. I love especially being a resource teacher, I love when math teachers set up their students with desk buddies, where they typically have a couple strong students at a group, and then like one of my resource students who may struggle. I love it because then they interact with each other and are able to develop some of those social awareness skills and practice it. Social narratives. If you have, I'm thinking about just the whole spectrum of students of, let's just say a student with lower ability or like a younger student who struggles with different things. There are so many social narratives that you can come up with, little social stories. I had a student in the past who would like stand super, super close to you. Like you couldn't really, you're like, oh, hey, I feel uncomfortable. So our speech therapist found the social story. It's called Too Close Tad. And it went through a scenario that was real life about Tad being too close to people and how it made people feel uncomfortable. And just reading through it with the students, it helped. That student eventually helped or improved that behavior. So, or giving students scenarios of something that might have happened And even like if it's older, like having that tough conversation. I know 8th graders at East have learned about the Holocaust, and teaching students about what had happened and trying to find the positive, and like who are the people that stood up and supported, and who are the people that chose to let this continue on, and just trying to teach them that empathy and showing them how it is. I think that that's something that we as teachers can work really well with students and teaching them. Let's see, and then group buddies. And also too, like I like to go back to that. If you have students, like let's just say, hey, we're going to pick partners today or pick a small group, have some students, if you know there's students that aren't picked a lot in your class, that can be very nerve-wracking for those students. So maybe in advance you can say, okay, my daughter's name's Cora. I'd be like, hey Cora, you can grab a buddy, but also include this other student with you. So that way that student doesn't feel left out. And so Cora knows like, okay, I'm going to look at you and I'm going to look at you, like we're going to be partners. So making sure those students who don't normally get picked for groups, they have somebody who's a stronger student or a kind student who's just going to include them and make them feel welcome. That's definitely a great strategy for them. And I love this chart. I stole this from one of our 7th grade language arts teachers, that they made this in a small setting for the student's desk. So when they have conversations in class, it improved it. So instead of saying, oh, you're wrong, it could be like, I disagree with so-and-so what he said, because here's why. And they give that answer. So this gives students strong sentence starters. That way they can, not struggle with that social conversation in the classroom, but they can also, share those educated responses. All right. Next up, relationships. This is the biggest thing with students. I keep saying everything's the biggest thing, but I really feel like creating those strong relationships is going to make a difference in your classroom. If you have a positive relationship with students, they're going to want to work for you. If you get involved with what they like, they're going to put that extra effort in. So I had a student who's obsessed with sharks, and I kind of went shark theme in my classroom for that student. And, it made a difference using those I statements, modeling how to apologize. If you mess up as a teacher, say, oh guys, I'm sorry, I forgot to make this, or I forgot about this, I apologize. So students know that you're human. I kind of laughed when I apologized to my nephew at a baseball game, and somebody was like, never apologize to kids. And I kind of looked at him like, really? I was like, I'm just showing the kid that, hey, I'm human. I messed up. I apologized. I said, I'm sorry, I forgot your birthday gift. It's at home. I'll get it to you again. But that makes a difference with students and with children, because they'll feel like they're respected, and just continue to provide that positive feedback. One thing that I want to continue myself to improve upon is to making sure my positive email list going home to parents. And, I got this from another teacher too, is that I saw them doing, they have a list of students. So like at East, we have, a team of students where there's like 100 kids. So that student picks like eight or 9 kids each week that they're going to email the student and the parents on something positive that they did in class, whether it was like 2 kids per class period that they would pick from, and they would email home, and they would just rotate. So that way, by the end of the semester, the parents got at least 2 to 3 positive emails about their child coming home. So that's something I know I'm trying to get better at, is making sure that I'm sending as many positive emails home as I can, because as a parent, getting those positives is huge. But if you're always getting those negative comments, then, it's hard, and you're not getting that. And that student's just like, okay, great, I'm in trouble again. But giving those positive feedback helps you develop that relationship. And then the last one is that decision making. So decision making is making sure that you're making constructive choices about your behavior and social interactions across the diverse situations. So do grade checks with students, reflect with students on their positive and negative behaviors, problem solve, and work with students too, and on modeling their respect for their personal space. I have a spot on my desk where it's my stuff, but I also have a spot for students that they can use, and they know that. And I don't take things off their desk. They don't take things off my desk. I model that with them. And then also making sure holding the students accountable for their actions, making sure that they know that, okay, this is acceptable, this is not acceptable. Just making sure that you're being consistent across the board. So I know that's a lot. I wanted to make sure I got through all of that because I know our time is up. If you want to collaborate with me at all on anything, you're welcome to email me. I'm happy to share resources with you. If you have any other questions, just let me know. And thank you so much for joining today, or if you're joining late and watching this, thanks for checking it out. Hope you guys have a great day.